Garden Jen. Welcome to my journey. Let's see what's in store today. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my kitchen. This is Jen. Today we're going to be making some bread. So I've had a lot of requests for a bread making video, so we're going to give it a whirl. First of all, I just wanted to share a verse with you that's kind of touched my heart, and it kind of goes along with what we're doing today. In John 6:35, Jesus was talking, and he said, "I am the bread of life. He that cometh unto me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst." What a promise that there is in Scripture about Jesus, and if we cling to Him and believe in Him, we will never hunger or thirst. And He's talking about spiritual food, not necessarily physical food, but He does take care of the physical needs as well. So anyways, Jesus was talking about Him being the bread of life. But today we're going to be making actual physical bread. It's going to be a whole wheat, multi-grain, got a bunch of different components in it. You can keep this really simple, and I'll explain that as I go. This is just a basic bread recipe that I've actually added components in to make it a little bit healthier for the family, and just to give it a little variety. And just a note here, you will see flies flying around. I do live on a farm, and so with it being cooler, they've decided to come inside, and really not much I can do. So yes, you're going to see those little things flying around. Just try to ignore them. That's what we try to do. Anyways, moving on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a starter sponge, and what that means is I'm going to add a warm water and yeast and sugar to this bowl. And then after I get that mixed in, I'm going to add just a little bit of flour from the recipe, and I'm going to let the yeast wake up and get happy, start feeding on that sugar, start getting really excited, and really start perking up. And it'll start making that that little bit of dough and things in there start to really rise and things. And that does two things. It allows your yeast time to get up, wake up, and start performing. That way your dough is on its way forward. And it also is a safety check, or not safety check, but it's a check on the yeast. You don't want to go through the whole thing of making a whole batch of dough to find out that your yeast is not viable. So by starting with a small amount first, you're guaranteeing that the yeast is going to work for the whole batch. Because if it's not rising that small dough, it's obviously not going to work for the whole bread at large. So we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of warm flour, or warm water. And it has to be warm. You don't want it hot, and you don't want it cold. And then to that, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of, I use instant yeast. You can use active dry yeast, which is most readily available in the stores, but I use instant yeast, and you can also find that too. The measurements are a little different for each. The active dry yeast is one of those little packets, or 2 teaspoons, and then you just cut it down a little bit for the active yeast because you don't need so much. And then to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of a sweetener. I use local honey. I get this from some friends of ours who are beekeepers, and local honey is very good to use. It's in raw form, meaning it hasn't been heated up so hot that it kills the microbes and things in the honey, because those microbes and things are actually beneficial to you. They help you fight or battle seasonal allergies if you're allergic to the pollens and things of the air and things like that, and it helps your immune system. So we use raw local honey, and we're going to add that to our mixture. just gonna whisk this in here. It helps dissolve the yeast and the honey both. Alright. So that's whisked in there and everything's nice and dissolved. I don't know if you can see that there on the camera. If not, I'll show you in a minute what the whole process looks like. Alright, so to this liquid mixture, we're going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And whisk that in there. And if you do this right, it should look like a thin pancake crepe batter. That's what you want it to look like. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. So you're going to have a thin batter. It's going to look kind of like a pancake batter, crepe batter. And then to that, on the top of it, you're going to add a 1/2 cup to a cup of whole wheat flour. Looks like 1/2 cup. And what you're doing is you're just coating the top of the liquid mixture. You don't want it to plop down in there and disturb it. You just want it to coat. You're dusting the top of that with a good layer of flour. And what that does is that's kind of your signal. This was going to start to rise, and if it rises, you're going to start seeing that top crack, and it's going to start puffing up and cracking, and that's how you know that your yeast is active. So I'll show you what that looks like. So there's the top. It's dusted with the flour, and when it starts to rise, you'll see that crack like that all over the top. So we're going to cover this with a kitchen towel, and we're going to let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes depending on the temperature of the room. And if your room is not very warm, if it's cool, and I've dealt with this the other day, something that you can do to help it along is take some like a damp bath towel or a couple of damp dish towels that are really warm, and wrap them around the base of the bowl and cover it that way, and then those will help warm the bowl and warm the mixture, and that'll help. So we're just going to let this sit for 5 to 10 minutes, come back and check on it, and see if our mixture is starting to rise. Okay, welcome back. It's been about 10-15 minutes since I started the sponge, and as you can see, I ended up putting the towel around my bowl. It's a little chilly in here for bread. It's about 66 degrees in here, which isn't too bad for human wise, but for bread and trying to get bakery items to rise, it's a little too chilly. So I did put a hot damp cloth around the base of the bowl. So let's see what's going on inside. Alright, that's looking beautiful. See how we have all those cracks around the crust that we made? That is what you want. That lets you know that your yeast is ready to go, that your dough is on the way to becoming a good loaf of bread. So I'm going to set you back down over here, and we're going to continue on our way. Alright. I actually had to start the wood stove because for the rest of the process we definitely need it warm in here. It's hard to get dough to rise if it's too chilly. So I did kick on the wood stove to bring the temperature up a little bit in the room. Alright, so we're going to discard this towel here without knocking everything else over, because that's all good to go. Okay, so what we're going to do is just add things to this one by one. And I'm going to use a spatula, because with the first part of the dough we're actually going to mix it in by hand, and then we'll let the machine do the rest of the work. So to this mix, I like to add all my additives first before adding the rest of the flour. That way the batter's loose enough where it can be incorporated very easily. Okay, so the extras that we're adding to this that you do not have to add if you want just a basic recipe, I am adding a ½ cup of quick oats. I'm adding a ¼ cup of hemp hearts. You can find most of these in the health food stores. You can also find some in the big box stores where the premium products are for baking supplies. These are hemp hearts. Very nutritional. Again, that is optional. Oops. And I have brown flax seeds. These are whole, and it's a ¼ cup of that. Again, optional. And then last but not least, for the optional items, I have some vegan milk powder. This is soy milk powder, and it adds just a little more richness to the bread, I think. Again, this is completely optional. You do not need this for the recipe. I'm just going to dump that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and just mix that in. Alright. That's nice and mixed in there. Looks almost like bread dough already, except this is only part of it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add another ¾ cup of warm water to this. Alright. And then to that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of, this is vegan butter, or you can use oil or applesauce. That works just fine. And then we're going to add ½ teaspoon of salt. And the reason you don't add salt until after the yeast wakes up is the salt will actually kill the yeast. So it's safe to add it now that the yeast is up and running. Okay, we'll mix that in. You could do this all in the machine if you wanted to. You don't have to do it by hand. But I enjoy doing things by hand as much as possible. And then when I have to, I allow the machine to work. Just something about doing it by hand is just that much fulfilling. Alright. Now we're going to go ahead and add another ½ cup of flour. And we're just going to sprinkle that on top, just like we did before. And then to that, we're going to add, this is 2 tablespoons of gluten flour. And this is different than just regular flour. This is the gluten, part of the germ that makes the gluten threads really work. And it's sold as either gluten flour, vital gluten, or something of that sort. And it's a premium product, so it's a little pricey. But for whole wheat, multigrain breads, you need this to help with the gluten, because whole wheat doesn't do the gluten threads enough on its own to make a light, fluffy loaf. You'll end up with something really heavy and dense and chewy and just eh. So this is 2 tablespoons of vital gluten or gluten flour. Same thing, just different names depending on where you get it from. Alright. And then what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put it in my mixer and use the dough hook, and we're going to start mixing this up. And we're going to see how it looks. We're going to let it set for 10 minutes. Let it rest, let all the water hydrate the flour. That's very important for bread. You want to let it sit and let the water get into all the flour and hydrate it. And then look and see if you need to add more flour. If not, fine. But if so, you can also add it. That way you're not accidentally adding too much flour because it hasn't had time to hydrate. And wheat flour, because it is dense, needs that extra time. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the machine, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. Okay, so we have our bowl attached to our mixer with the hook attached to it as well. We're just going to put this down and lock it in place. We're going to just mix this on low. Let that get all incorporated. All right. It's mixed pretty good, but we got a lot around the edge of the bowl here, so we're just gonna put that down in there. Okay. Now you can see that this is a mushy, galoppy kind of, looks like oatmeal that's been cooked. And we're gonna take our towel that we had used earlier. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. We're just going to put it around the bowl like this. I said it's a little tricky to do one-handed. Alright. So we've got the bowl covered. It's to help keep the warmth in. And we're going to let this sit for another 5 to 10 minutes, again, so the flour can hydrate with all the water. And then we have a better idea on if we're going to need to add more flour, or if we got enough flour in here to get this dough ready to go into a loaf of beautiful bread. So stay tuned. I'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 15 minutes or so that we've let this dough hydrate. The hydration period is what it's called. Let's see what we're looking like now. That's looking pretty good. You can see that the dough is a lot bigger. It's risen quite a bit since we last left it. And you can tell that there's still a lot of moisture in here, which means we are good to add some more flour. So we're going to start adding in flour about a half a cup at a time and mixing it. And we're going to see how that goes. So hold on just a moment while we start doing that process. Alright, the dough is just about done. So I wanted to show you what it looks like now. That is some elastic dough. See how long it's holding on to that hook there? Very elastic. It's not falling apart. That is what you want in bread dough. Okay? That's all the gluten that's been made into beautiful elastic strands, and that's what makes your bread dough rise. Okay? So I'm going to set you down, and we're going to start getting this dough ready to go. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and take this bowl off the mixer. Move the mixer out of the way. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a little bit of flour, put it on my board here, my table. I'm going to take the dough out. Like so. We're just going to fold it in on itself. Fold it in on itself. And fold it one more time and put it into a ball. Your dough should be dry enough, or not sticky enough, excuse me, where you can actually do this part. So now it's in a bowl, or ball. I'm going to add just a little bit of flour. Okay. And then we're going to cover this and let this sit for about another 10 minutes to let that gluten relax, because right now it's really tight, stressed out, it's not going to want to move. So we're just going to let this sit for about 10 minutes, let it relax, let it chill out, and then we're going to go ahead and put this in a loaf pan. Alright, welcome back. Well, we're getting ready to put the dough into the pan. So it's sat here for about 15 minutes. And so it's risen quite a bit. Nice and puffy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our loaf pan. This is a 9x5. I've had bigger ones, but they just don't work so well as far as getting a good, nice loaf of bread cooked evenly. So 9x5 works just fine. And I spray it with just all-purpose cooking spray. And we're going to flip the dough over, press it down into a square, or a rectangle, excuse me. Kind of deflating it a little bit. And then you're just going to fold it in thirds. Make sure you press that steel down. And fold it one more time. And then gently roll it on that seam. And plop it into the pan like that. And then I spray the top again because we're going to cover it with plastic wrap while it rises to keep it from drying out. And you don't want it sticking to the plastic wrap because the whole purpose will be defeated because your bread will deflate again. So, and I spray the plastic wrap too, just to make sure I have enough on there. Like so. Then cover it back up, and depending on the temperature of your room, let it rest for another 20 minutes, half an hour or so until it's about an inch or two above the rim of the pan. And then we're going to pop that into a 350 degree oven for about 45 minutes until it's risen really well, nice and golden brown, and it sounds hollow when it's tapped. So when we get to that point, I will bring you guys back to show you what it should look like. And then we'll put it in the oven, and I'll show you the end results. So I'll be back in a few. Okay, so this is what the bread looks like after it's been sitting about 15-20 minutes. It's risen quite a bit, not quite 2 inches, but it's about 1.5 inches above the rim. And I don't want to go too much further because it is quite spongy. And if I let it try to get too high, it might actually fall in the when it goes in the oven and gets the high heat. So this is good. It's spongy. It's ready to go. So we're just going to go ahead and take off the saran wrap and throw that away. And this is where if you wanted to make a design in the bread, you could slash it and make designs in it at this point before you put it in. But I'm just going to leave it as is. We're going to pop it in the oven, again, 350 degrees for 45 minutes. And it should be nice and golden brown. Should be a nice distance above the pan. And it should smell really good. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the finished product when it's all done cooking. Okay, the bread just came out of the oven. It's been cooking at 350 for 45 minutes, and this is what it looks like. It's risen quite a bit, nice and golden brown. It's beautiful, and it smells wonderful. What we're going to do is take it out of the pan, and then gently just set it on a cooling rack. You don't want to cut this. You want to let it sit for an hour, as tempting as it would be to have hot, smothered bread. But you need to let this rest. That way the steam and everything that's inside can naturally escape, and your bread will be nice and dry. Not, completely dry, but dry, because if you cut this now, the steam won't escape properly, and you'll end up with a damp bread that doesn't store very well. So just hold off on cutting it. Let it sit for an hour, and then go ahead and enjoy it. Alright, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them below. Hit the subscribe button so you can keep updated on what we're doing here in the kitchen on my journey. And if you like my videos, keep watching the next one that's in line from my kitchen or wherever else I happen to be at the time. And go ahead and share them with your friends. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye now.